so good to see you guys again. If you don't know, my name is Tavel and I'm part of the GFL family. Today we are going to be going live with Sarah Zula. For those who don't know, Sarah Zula is part of the All Shift Happily Now team and community and family. And we're going to be talking to her today a little bit about, what the All Shift Happily Now team is, how she joined them. My dad's going to be joining us just in a second too. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a light worker, what it means to her, how she, started this spiritual journey of hers. So how's everybody doing? We're just waiting for her to log on and join our live video. How is everybody? What do you want to hear us ask her today? We're just waiting on my dad to join and Sarah Zula. For those who don't know, we are a family company. It's me, my dad, and my sister who have this mission to spread light and elevate consciousness towards 5D. And very exciting stuff. Oh, here we go. Join too. Hi, Sarah. Accept. Okay. Hopefully there are no technical difficulties today.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh my goodness. Hi, beautiful people. It's so good to see you both.
It's so good to see you too. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to be back with you guys. I feel like I'm back with family. We're just chilling, having a morning chat. It's so good to talk to you guys.
So good to talk to you too. For those who don't know, Sarah and I actually have the same birthday.
I know, we figured that out. Yeah, did you hear that?
Coming soon.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Yeah, I know. We have the same birthday.
Amazing. Libra babies.
I know.
And you guys just did another live together, All Shift Happily, a few days ago.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. It was so fun. I'm so happy you joined us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. I was so nervous, but made it through, and I felt so held and so loved by your guys' community. So it was the best experience.
Isn't it a beautiful community? Like, there is just something about the All Shift Happily community. It's so loving, so patient, like so kind.
So kind. I really just felt like that space of love, and the comments were going off. I was like, the internet can be a little bit of a scary place. People put themselves out there and you never know how people are going to receive you, especially your first time. So it was just so beautiful. I felt so held, so loved, so accepted, and it was the best experience all around.
I'm so happy to hear that. I hope you come back soon.
Absolutely. Guest appearance.
Yes, I love it.
So how did you actually get into the All Shift Happily Now team? How did you meet everybody? What was the story there?
Oh my goodness, so synchronistic. So you want to hear something funny? So I actually stumbled upon, because my dad was a huge fan of Tim and watching Cosmic Disclosure. So I didn't really even know Tim's work before, but when I would go visit my parents, my dad's like, "Oh, Sarah, you gotta watch this. This sounds like a lot of what you talk about. You gotta watch this." So I'd sit with him, I would watch it. And then I caught a live. I think we froze. Are we back? I don't know if it's
we're back.
Okay. And then I caught a live with Sarah, Breskman Cosme, and Tim for 2 minutes. And I'm like, they're like family. I feel like they're my friends. And I literally said out loud, it would be so cool to work with them. And then I just let it go. And then a few weeks later, a past client of mine actually reached out. I was speaking, I think, at New Life Expo in Florida, and I had hung out with Sarah at Conscious Life Expo. I met her there and we vibed, and then I went to New Life Expo and me and Sarah were there again speaking at that event, which was so cool. And my past client saw, I think, that we were together, and then she was like, "Wait, Sarah Zula." She's like, "You should totally join the All Shift Happily Now meditation we're doing." I hadn't worked with this client in years, but she told everyone that I should be a part of it, and that day I was a part of it and never left. So it was just very synchronistic, very much like as soon as I got on the call with them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just like the same way I feel with you two. It's just like, it's a flow, like it's a vibe. It's just beautiful energy. It makes sense.
And it's
Yeah.
crazy how, you spoke that almost into existence when you were watching Tim with your dad. Like how insane. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was so fun. And it's just like, that's like the energy I love to create. And that energy of like, wouldn't this be fun? Like, wouldn't this be so cool? Like, wouldn't this be so fun to do? Like, that's a vibe. Like, that's the energy that I love to create in. So it was just a fun little story of how it unfolded. But it is something that I'm honored to be a part of. It matters a lot to me to be a part of, because we are going through a massive shift as a species. You guys are well aware of this, and it's a big one, and it's happening, and people deserve to know what's happening, and people also deserve to have support and to realize that there's more of us out there that are like full of beautiful hearts, that know we're miraculous beings, that are loving beings. Like, there's so many more of us that are so full of love out there than we think. So this mission means a lot to me to be a part of, and why I love working with you guys, because we stand for this ascension and consciousness, and we're like that constant reminder of like, you're not alone. There's so many good people out there. So it means a lot to me to be a part of the mission.
Absolutely. And I feel like, as light workers, part of, the sort of character arc, if you will, is this feeling of like separateness. A lot of them seem to be in communities that they feel isolated with their beliefs, with, the knowledge that is being downloaded, with how they feel, knowing that something is happening and something that's not being portrayed on the news, something that's not being really spoken about. And so having that community, having somewhere that people can turn to and feel supported and feel held and feel loved and also get information is so important. And it's, you guys do it through meditation and through your own personal work, which is coaching and working with people, as well as like working in groups and speaking about it. And we do it through the means that we know how. My dad's been in the fashion industry for well over 20 years, and the way that we know how to make community is to put it on ourselves, to really like embody that message and have it almost like armor. Like, I'm a light worker, like this is what I stand for, like this is who I am, and the people that get it will get it, and the people that don't, maybe it plants a little seed in their mind for later. You never know. And it also brings people together. Oh, you're a light worker? I'm a light worker too. Like, it's the stories we've heard are so beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love that you two are doing this together. Like, what a vibe to just like, even just coming on this live, and it's like your family, and you come in and I'm part of the family. It feels good.
We're actually three that are doing it together, because we have our other sister, Shani, Javel's sister, Shani. With the things of the family, as sometimes there's like, it's been an amazing journey, and I think we learn a lot from each other, and we learn a lot about each other as part of that process. But we wanted to talk to you more about what was your process of awakening? What is your process of becoming eventually that guide that you are becoming, coach, that the work that you do with people? It's been probably a beautiful process, and I want you to tell people about it.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you. And I want to make sure I heard your question, because for me on my end, it went in and out. But were you asking what the process was for me, like the awakening process and the process for me to become a coach and do what I do today, subconscious work?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, and I think obviously it works together. It's two questions that are melted into one.
For sure, I agree. And like, I remember when people ask me this question, I'm like, well, I was born and I started this work, like that's just like how it feels at some points. But it very much was a part of me early on, and I fell off the path for a while. But when I was 4 years old, like I've asked my parents this. I'm like, what 4-year-old says this? But when I was 4 years old, I went up to my parents, and this is the language I knew at the time. But I went up to my parents and said, I know God lives in my heart and I want to do the work of God. Can I get baptized? And they were just like, this is a weird kid. Like, she's weird. Like, I was like listening to like Mozart and watching like surgeries on TV and like pretending I was reading these ancient books. They're like, who is this? But like, I did that when I was young, and I had turmoil in my family growing up. Great parents, but mental health issues in my family throughout. And I just remember from an early on just praying to God for the words to flow through me to support people who are in pain. And obviously I didn't know necessarily exactly the way I just articulated it, but I'll never forget the first moments that just the chills of truth would rush through my body, and I would say something and people would get nervous. They would be like, who, like, this kid is creeping me out. Like, that's how people would react. But then, you know, fast forward many years and I fell off the path. I just wanted to be cool. I cared about going out with my friends. I just wanted to be like, look pretty and look like I just fell off the path and just wanted to be a normal teenager. I grew up in a party town. I wanted to party. I wanted to drink. I wanted to get high. I wanted to do the things. And I very much so fell off the path for years and experienced my own forms of trauma in those years, and got caught up in some things that felt very traumatic without going into them, but they were. And I just felt almost like my light within getting suppressed more and more and more because I didn't know how to handle the trauma I was experiencing. And so what I did was just like kept going, ignored it. Like I didn't know what to do. I just kept going. And when I was around 16, 17 years old, I went through one of my first dark nights of the soul. And that's like that moment I feel like that if we're on here, we felt it. Like the people who are awakened, the people who are on pages like this, like we've felt a crumbling of our world before, which is what I would call a dark night. And it was like, I didn't like the being I was inside of that dark night. Like everything was crumbling away. My friends, I was questioning integrity with my family. There were things going on with family. My whole soccer career, which was like everything to me, was falling apart. I got hurt right before a huge tournament where I was going to get recruited. So like now everything's falling apart. My career, my friends, my family, and I'm left with just me because I got hurt in soccer. And it was just like me. And I didn't like who I was. And I was just faced with being me, and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, and I didn't like who I saw in the mirror. And because I was hurt with my soccer career, I'm like speeding this up, but because I was hurt in my soccer career, I felt like the last thing that I enjoyed, which was soccer, and the last thing I felt good about myself in, which was soccer, now was gone. And I very much so was facing like potentially not playing D1 soccer, and like my dreams like falling apart, like all of that was coming because of that injury. And I was like, what's left now? Like, I don't understand what's left. Like, what is the point of this? I don't like my friends. I don't like myself. What? I can't trust my family, like everything. I was like, what's left? And I remember my dad said something to me that changed everything, because he said one sentence. He said, Sarah, he's like, I understand how much you care about soccer, but you're not a soccer player. You just love playing soccer. And when I heard that, I was like, what? Like, I didn't know what it meant. I was 16, 17. And I was like, you have, like, what do you mean? I'm not a soccer player. I just love playing soccer. I'm a soccer player and I love playing soccer. I'm both. And he's like, just let yourself sit with that for a minute. You're not a soccer player. You just love playing soccer. And shortly after that, I convinced my school, my parents, everyone to allow me to be bedridden so I can heal faster. And all that did was cause me to be more with myself than ever before. So now I'm bedridden, and all I'm left with is, it was almost like all I was left with was that one sentence: you're not a soccer player, you just love playing soccer. And it made me so mad, because I was like, what does it mean? What does it mean? You're not a soccer player, you just love, what does it mean? It just pissed me off. But then it started allowing me to ask better questions. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm not a soccer player and I just love playing soccer, then who am I? Then who am I? Maybe I'm not this person I don't like. Maybe if I'm not this person I don't like, then I can change who I am. And then that went to, maybe if I can change who I am, then maybe I can become better. Maybe I can feel better about myself. Maybe I can change my life. And that came in a moment where I felt like I had nothing left, and it was like that spark of light I could lean into. And what it drove me directly to was like, okay, maybe I can change this. Okay, then how do I change it? And that's when I started picking up the spiritual books that were all around my house. And that's when I started, because I was bedridden. I had nothing to do. So I just started reading books and watching videos, and I found Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza and like all these people who were kind of quiet at that time, but like kind of big, like had books and stuff. And I started reading Taoism. I just couldn't get enough of all of this stuff. And I discovered a few things at that time that would set the trajectory. I'm not kidding, when I was 16, 17, that would set the trajectory for my whole life of what I do today. And first, I discovered that I don't know who I am, but that sounds like the revelatory experience of a lifetime to figure out. And that was the ancient text I was studying. But I also discovered very specific things about the transformation journey. I discovered with all these people that I was studying, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, I'm like, all of these people have this commonality of the subconscious mind that they're teaching about. They all have this commonality that I feel like is the core thread, and it was a core thread for me I wanted to unravel. And it was that core thread of the subconscious mind controlling 95% of our lives. But the next piece of how we're not aware of this, what's in the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And to me, guys, like, this wasn't cool with me, because I'm like, hold up. On the spiritual side, I'm learning all of these things about how we're incredibly powerful beings and we're creators of our reality. And then on the science side, I'm learning that our subconscious mind is actually what's controlling 95% of our lives, but we're not aware of what's inside of that. The 16-year-old me who wanted to feel empowered and wanted to change my life did not like that, because it didn't match. And so I went on this like almost like voracious journey of being like, no way am I accepting that, because I believe we're powerful beings that are creating our reality. So if we're just not aware of what's in our subconscious, yet that's controlling our lives, that's not empowering to me. I don't like that. Are you guys following where I'm at this point?
Totally.
So that's where I became obsessed with being like, if our subconscious mind is the key to transformation, if it's the thing running our lives, then why aren't all these people just teaching about that? And if it's controlling 95% of our lives and we're these powerful creator beings, then therefore we must be able to, it must be more simple for us to become aware of what's in our subconscious. It must. And that's when I started to discover these quantum physicists who were talking about how we're actually the ones creating our realities, and that our realities are simply an extension of us. They're mirroring us. And that's where I found the quotes of, whether it's quantum physics or Rumi, who said, you are the mirror as well as the face in it. And that's when I discovered Greg Braden, who would actually teach that our very reality is mirroring to us our deepest beliefs. And that's when the golden thread unraveled in a way that would set the trajectory of my life, because I was like, oh, if our reality is showing us our deepest beliefs, then our reality is therefore reflecting to us our subconscious all the time. So then I became obsessed with simplifying this. I'm like, okay, well, if that's a key and that's a thread, then how do we make this simple? How do we make this so simple so that we can become aware of our limitations through observing our realities? And that became, I didn't know that would become, this was like a very selfish way of going about it, because I wanted to change, I wanted to get better, right? So when I started doing that and I started to unravel this thread of, oh, our reality is mirroring to us always our deepest subconscious beliefs. So maybe if I just pay attention to my reality, I can reveal my own limitations through that, and I can start transforming it. This is the key. And I was like, why isn't everyone talking about this? Because I started to unravel. I started to see my trauma through my own challenges in my life. And I started to see, oh, this challenge is here because this is what I believe about myself, and this is the identity I'm living within. So this challenge perfectly matches the identity I'm living in. And I was like, okay, well, is that identity true? Of course it isn't true. If it was true and it matched the infinite nature of the being I was, I wouldn't be suffering. So
Right.
it must be a lie. So I learned early on to start dissolving my own lies of a reality I was living in. I revealed these traumas that I had hidden of sexual abuse and these heavy things I had hidden because I didn't know how to deal with it. And I actually learned how to transform it. I actually learned how to not make these traumatic experiences mean anything about me because it's not true. Instead of thinking I'm not enough or I'm unlovable or I'm not worthy or I'm incapable, I realized that those are all lies. And then when I realized how much it worked, I was like, oh, okay, this is my life's work. This is what I'm here to help people with. Like, long story short, because I realized in myself, oh my goodness, this is a key to freedom. And I was coaching at this time because I just wanted to help people. I just wanted to serve people. I was doing health coaching. And as I was health coaching, I'm like, what am I doing? Because all these people are trying to help themselves with their health. A meal plan isn't going to help them with this. That serves a place. I'm not knocking people who are doing that. But for me, I'm like, why aren't I doing what I help myself with people? Like, this has created freedom in my own life. Why aren't I doing that? So then I got certified in neurolinguistics and all of the things with the subconscious. But still, even when I was certified in that, I was still just doing my own thing. I was still just doing the thing that my own voracious exploration to know my own divinity was showing me how to do. And that's when other coaches and other healers were like, Sarah, how do you do what you do? Please show me this because I don't understand. No one else is doing this. What are you doing? And then I started certifying other coaches in it and the whole thing happened. But like, long story short, I went on the tangent of it, but long story short, it was just like this voracious, like, knowing inside of me that spark of divinity is there and that we all have it inside of us. And that if I don't like who I am, then how do I become more of that spark of divinity? And that's what led me to the subconscious and how to transform the limitations that were in my subconscious so that I can become more of who I really am. And that's the work I still do to this day. It's really what I'm helping people do, because any of these lies that we're living in, they're not true. These I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, but it's the prisons that people are living within unknowingly. They're not aware that they're living within those identities, but they're living their whole lives adapting to them. So someone who lives in the identity of I'm not enough is then going to go adapt and either become a perfectionist or either, right? Are you following? So people adapt to these identities they're living in and they adapt in a good way. Maybe the perfectionist is then on the top of a career or running a multi-million-dollar company, but they still don't feel good enough because they never got rid of the original identity in the subconscious that is creating the limitation. They're still creating within the world of a confinement of a prison. So what I do is I help people dissolve those prisons. And I started with myself. And then it became like, I must share this.
So when you do this kind of work with people, is that because you're working on the subconscious? I mean, in a way, you got to retrain yourself, right? You got to retrain the way you think. You got to, in a way, rewire everything. Is that work a lifetime work? Is that work, because the change does not occur immediately. It takes a moment for the brain to start thinking differently, right? For the subconscious to start getting rid of all those traumas, all those beliefs, all those judgments, right? So does people that work with you need like a lifetime work, or is that a process that you do in a certain amount of time and the results are there?
That's such a beautiful question. And I'd like to answer with an example, if that's okay, because I think that's a really great question. Because when it comes to just generating profound levels of freedom, that's a lifetime work, because the levels of freedom that we can feel are never ending. The level of love that we can feel is never ending. It's infinite. So like that's a lifetime work of continuing to dissolve the subconscious limitations that allow us to be more us, that allow us to feel more love and joy. So that, I would say, is the process of the lifetime. And sometimes this work takes time. I think that's a beautiful point, because we want to be patient with ourselves. But what I want to add there, with respect to the fact that sometimes it does take time, is that sometimes it also is immediate. And I'd like to share an example of how that looks, if that's okay, to make it a little more real, instead of me just saying, hey, it's immediate sometimes. It's like, fuck off, girl. Like, I'm suffering. And like, people listening to that, it's just like, okay, cool, it's immediate, cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I'd rather give an example.
We live in a world that people are expecting immediate results. They want immediate satisfaction.
Yeah.
And in so many levels, that's not always the case. But please.
It's so funny. I just made a reel about this, because like we do want immediate results. We want fast results, but like greatness takes time. And like this work of becoming a work of art, becoming the divinity that we are, becoming who we came here to be, like it's a work of art, and we wouldn't want to rush that. Right? And there's never ending layers of ascension we can gather, and beauty we can reveal as the beings we are. Like we're an infinite mystery. So when we almost open that well to the depth of the infinite mystery that we can be, like it's never ending, right? So so that's beautiful. But also at the same time, the results I see are profound. They're profound, and they make no sense. They defy the odds on a regular basis. And I'll give you an example of that, because very much so I work with people whose health changes, chronic pain that people have had a lifetime going away, diseases that people say, oh no, you're just going to have to manage this inflammatory disease dissolving. And I see miracles before my eyes on a regular basis. So I just, yes, it can take time, and also it doesn't always have to. So something that happened, actually, I'll give it an example of what happened this morning, because it's just alive, and it's what happened with a client. So I had a client who was very new to my work, very new in working with me, very new to my work, that had years and years of therapy, years and years. And she's years and years of doing deep work. And she's like, I have done the work. I understand that I've manifested my current marriage because of what I did in childhood. Like, I get it. I get all of these things. And she's like, but I'm still in the suffering of it. I don't know how to change it. And I feel like she's in the suffering of it. And she has these diseases that have manifested in her body that doctors are now saying she has to take all these things for. And she's like, this has to change. I need something else. And she had seen the results of like multiple people in her network of people who have worked with me. And she's like, I got to work with you. Like, it's got to happen. We're doing this now. And on our first session, what she was aware of was this feeling that she got in childhood of not wanting to be like her parents. And her parents were very much so mentally and physically and emotionally abusive. So for her, the way she learned in her subconscious in those formative years is that she didn't want to be like that. She didn't want to be mean. She didn't want to be mentally, emotionally abusive. She didn't want to be how her parents treated her, which she very much so saw as something she wanted to escape. So that was the programming that was developed. Then she went about her life and she decided to break free of it. She's like, I turned 18, I became a powerful being, and I got out. And she does well for herself. But the thing is, she never actually dissolved the prison that was created at that time, the identity she created of herself. What she did was she just created freedom within the prison of the identity. And I'm going to share with you what that identity was. So the identity that we revealed on the call today was that she actually was living in a world where she was the victim and they were the enemy. So my parents are the enemy. She didn't know she was the victim. She just knew that they were the enemy. They were the villains. And if there's a villain, there's therefore a victim. Anytime we villainize someone, anytime we make someone wrong in our lives, we are therefore making ourselves a victim to them. There must be, if there's a villain, there's a victim. And that means we're victimizing ourselves if someone's a villain in our story. So what then happened in her life is she then manifested a marriage in the same story. So now her marriage was with a narcissist who was abusive mentally and emotionally, and at times lightly physically, which is not okay. But she manifested the same thing, and she's like, I thought I did all of this work to not manifest this. She's like, I don't understand. I feel like I'm trapped, because she was trapped. She was trapped in an identity that she didn't know she was in. And her identity, so if someone's, I'm going to break this down for everyone listening. So if someone's a villain, what is that? Maybe one of you can answer. So if someone's a villain, what are they saying inherently about themselves? What don't they feel?
Compassion.
They don't feel compassion, yes, because they're a villain and they're villainizing someone, so they don't feel compassion. If someone's a victim, I think I said it backwards. So if someone's a victim in their life, yes to that answer. But if someone's living as a victim, what do they not feel? What do victims not feel?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Boom, great answer. Another one though, a deep one that maybe would cause them to want to protect themselves. If people protect themselves, they don't feel what?
Strong.
Yeah. Amazing. And I'm going to jump in here because I'm going in a certain direction, but they don't feel safe. They don't feel safe. So the core limitation that she was actually living in was, I am not safe. Everyone has their own version of this. This is one of those limitations that we all have to some degree. I don't feel safe. I'm actually not going to be okay. That's a byproduct of that limitation. And this is something that, I want to go on a tangent a little bit, but this is something that, if you guys know Tim Tactics, he is a part of All Shift Happily Now. This is something that why our work is so powerful together, because he talks about the malevolent installation that happened on the planet. But the way I see it is in a subconscious programming that is a baseline limiting program we all share, that I've seen over thousands and thousands of clients, and have come to this conclusion. And one of them is, I'm not safe, i.e. I'm not going to be okay. And I see a comment here that someone that said, this is very revealing to me. Absolutely, because we all have our own degree of this. So for her, she didn't know she was living in this world, but she was living in a world where she's not safe. That's why she tried to escape. But when we live in a world of I'm not safe, there's no way not to manifest it, because that's the identity we're living in, and that's the lens we're seeing the world through. So those are all the decisions we make. So therefore, she chose a partner where she wouldn't feel safe, because that's the identity she was living in. Are you guys following?
Totally.
Absolutely.
So now she's in a partnership for 20 years of not feeling safe. And then the very disease, I didn't even ask her, but I said, is your disease one where your cells are attacking yourself? And she said, yes. And I said, why do you think I know that? And she said, well, now I know, because I have felt like everything and everyone was attacking me. So now her cells started listening to that and started attacking herself, because that's the world she was living in. Are you guys following?
Yes.
It always matches. It always matches. Our body listens to the identity we're in subconsciously.
Yes.
We don't know we're in it, but our body, our cells are listening. So that's why I could guess. And I was guessing so much about her life because I can get how it happens. And she's like, do you have a camera in my house? But it's because once we know the identity, we can see how human behavior will play out, and how human behavior will then play out with a partner, and we can see the world of it. And she said that she felt so unsafe and didn't even know that's the world she was living in. But she felt so unsafe that she would hide away in her room. She wasn't going out in the world anymore. So then what we did was went back and dissolved the very idea that she's ever not been safe. Because what is the first thing that proves to me that she's not safe? Well, the fact that she's alive. Yeah. Are we good? I'm on a tangent. You guys ask me one question and I'm gone.
No, please. This is so interesting.
Okay. So are you guys with me still?
Yes.
Okay. So now what we do with that, so everyone can follow and understand how this work works, but we revealed the subconscious limitation of I'm not safe, which is the identity that was running her life unknowingly. Then we went back to dissolve the lie, because all the evidence we need to know that I'm not safe is a lie is the fact that she's alive. She's here. So that means all the times and the evidence of her not being safe in the past in her life was a lie, because she survived. So now that the identity of I'm not safe is dissolving, she's now able to bring some of her power back to her and see that she's never been a victim. And if she's never been a victim, then she's never been a villain. And if she's never been a villain, then her husband, who she had villainized for so many years and was about to get a divorce, has never been a villain. And if he's never been a villain, then she doesn't have to try to protect herself so much every day with him. And if she doesn't have to try to protect herself so much every day with him, she can be a little bit more compassionate. She can be a little bit more open with him. She can be a little bit more patient with him and her. She can show up differently. And this doesn't mean that she accepts abusive behavior. This does mean that she can observe what she allows or doesn't allow in her life. Like, am I allowing this? No, I'll walk out. But it doesn't mean that she's living in a world of a victim of, why are you doing this to me? Can't you see that this is hurting me? That's a victim, unsafe. Are you guys following?
Totally.
So now this woman's whole identity changed in an hour. And guys, I've seen this over and over. I've seen this over and over where identities change and people around them are just different. They come to me and they said, I've had clients who have been in marriages and they were going to end it because they're like, I'm done. And I say, okay, like, I don't care what people do. Like, this is their life. I don't try to sway people, but they tell me I've been in this marriage for so many years. I'm done. I just want to have the self-empowerment to leave. And then in under 3 months, they tell me I've fallen in love with my partner for the first time. And this is because these limitations that we are walking with that are so normal, but they're not natural. And this is why I brought in the installation that Tim and I are teaching about in workshops and courses coming out soon. But because they're really, really normal. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not loved. I'm not seen. I'm not heard. All of these common things. I don't belong. I'm not safe. These are the common limitations that humans share. They're very, very normal, but they're not natural. And the reason that I know that is because as soon as we dissolve the lies in the perception that they created before they knew better, as soon as we dissolve those, people share the same thing. People share with me. I say, well, who would you be in the absence of that limitation? And what they tell me is the same thing. They say, I'm love. They say, I'm freedom. They say, I'm limitless. They say, I'm everything. I say, what world becomes available to you in the absence of that limitation that you know is a lie? And they say, everything becomes available to me. Freedom becomes available to me. So I see people come alive again on a regular basis, and I see it happen quickly. Now they go in their lives and they tell me, I don't know what happened, Sarah, but people in my life are just different. People in my life are just different. And I said, people in your life are different because you're different. You're different. You're no longer seeing the world through a lens that you're not going to be okay. So now you get to just be you. You're no longer seeing the world through a lens of you're not safe. So now you don't have to protect yourself in every situation. So now people are coming alive again. Their divinity is shining. It's coming through, and it does happen quickly very often. Now, it's not to say, like, it's a paradox of holding both, because we're big enough beings to understand paradoxes, or we wouldn't be on this live at this level of a conversation. It's a paradox of holding both. It's like sometimes integration can take some time. It can. Sometimes it can take some time. Like this client here was decades of feeling not safe. So when she goes into situations, she's going to calm her nervous system. She's going to remind that part of her, I'm safe now. She's going to do all these beautiful things. So sometimes it can take time, and sometimes it's immediate. Sometimes I see facial features on my clients change. Sometimes people who have chronic pain for their whole lives, I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how's the pain? In the beginning of the call, they tell me 10. And after the call, they tell me 2. I would say 0, but I'm having a hard time believing it's gone. So I see things happen quickly. So long story short, yes, sometimes things take time, and no, they don't always have to take time. Changes happen quickly when we're working in the quantum. And when we work with subconscious identities of ourselves, that's working in the quantum. Realities dissolve away. What people tell me it's like is like, have you guys ever seen Inception?
Yes.
So like, you know that scene where the architect starts changing the reality and like buildings start going like, so people will tell me, they're like, I feel like I'm in that scene in Inception. Like my whole reality is different. Like I don't understand. Everything I thought I knew is different. But what's empowering about it is people realize like, oh, okay, it's confronting at first because they realize, oh my goodness, I've created all this suffering for myself. So that's quite confronting at first. But then it's like, oh my goodness, I can change it. If I created it, that means I can change it. And now I can choose a new identity. I can choose to relate to myself as the truth of who I am, which is freedom, which is love, which is infinite, which is all the beautiful things.
Right.
So long story short, yes, it can take a long time, it can take time, it can take patience, but it can also happen quickly. Did that answer your question?
You answered my question, and we love it. And you know, it's all about, in a way, dealing with your limiting beliefs. And sometimes there's one, and sometimes there's a few of them. And you know, I guess that every time you get to work with something else and just peel, like, right, layers and layers and layers. But I had another question that I wanted to ask you. You know, there's so much that we carry, and the trauma and those limiting beliefs, most of them are starting in very early age. Those are things that happen to us as kids. Have you seen building traumas and beliefs systems that came at later stages, or it's always from very young, early age?
That's a great question. We're gonna get. Can I go pretty esoteric on us real quick?
Good.
How deep can we go?
You do you, Sarah. You do
Let's
you.
go. Okay, you do me. Let's go. All right. Okay. So now the thing I'm going to answer very scientifically at first. So the subconscious is impacted and can be influenced and impacted based on any heightened emotional charge. Because as soon as there's a heightened emotional charge, the subconscious becomes more malleable, more changeable. So for example, when COVID was starting, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that word. I don't know if that's still a thing. But when the whole thing was starting in our reality, the first thing I shared with people is your subconscious is more malleable right now because fear is getting generated. Fear is getting generated. So now the subconscious is more changeable. So anything we do after it sinks into the subconscious quicker. So for example, it was a great time for people to learn a new language, learn a new skill, because they'll learn quicker. But it was also a time that however people handled it would sink into their subconscious and become a part of them more easily. The subconscious gets more malleable. So yes, things can happen in our adult lives that impact the subconscious. That's the answer on a very scientific way. So yes, things can happen in our subconscious in adulthood that activate a limitation. But the thing I said here is activate a limitation. Because from the work I've seen, from the spiritual work I know deep in my heart, and just what I've seen over the years, is that it's almost like these infinite souls that we are come into this experience with a very specific set of lessons we'd love to learn. Have you guys known that to be true as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we come into, ooh, it smells getting some messages about being gorgeous. Let's go. You are gorgeous. So, okay. No, we'll come back. I'll come back. So from the perspective of it, it's almost as if we could think of this soul as this limitless being that comes wrapped in an identity in these constraints that are the perfect contrast to allow us to learn what we're meant to learn. And as souls, it's like, oh yeah, I can totally handle that. I can totally do this. Yeah, give me that. I got this. And it's like, then we come here and we're like, holy shit, it's so much harder than I thought. And we get caught up because there has been very malevolent forces on the planet who have been very manipulative, and there's some dark energies that it's easy to get caught up in. It's easy to get caught up in the negativity. It's easy to forget who we really are. It's easy to forget these things, and we come here and we're like, oh my gosh, it's so much harder than I thought. This lesson is so much harder than I thought. So what I would say is that we have the experiences in our lives that sort of activate what's always been there. And to me, that matches a lot with physics as well because of resonance. It's like we wouldn't be in a situation if we weren't vibrating at it to some degree, if there wasn't something for us in it. So to me, it's also very scientific and makes sense in that way, but it's also very spiritual on a way that, yes, we come here with very specific things that it's like, yeah, I come here to learn. And then the very experiences, like what happens in our childhood, sort of activate that opportunity to learn what we're meant to learn. And the lessons are very much so almost like the polar end of the scale. What I always share with people is, yes, we're doing soul refinement work when they come to work with me. We're learning deep soul lessons and coming to deep levels of freedom, because we go to that experience of like, okay, well, that made me feel like I was unworthy. And then I lived my life because I felt like I was unworthy. That's the constraint. So the soul lesson would sort of be like the opposite of that. It would sort of be like, I know that my worth is inherent. So if someone would feel like their limitation was around the world of like, maybe someone, I'll use an example for a client. So I had a client who was bullied their whole lives. It was very abused. It was almost like his father just like nitpicked every little thing he did. And it made him feel like, you know, he wasn't good enough. And it made him feel like he had to like tiptoe around people, and he people pleased because of it, and just kind of like meshed in with the crowd because of it. So then his soul lesson on the other side of that was to be so authentically him in the face of anything. And the very nitpicking that his father did his whole life was the strength that was building his authenticity. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like torture. It felt like, why can't my dad just like accept me and love me and tell me he loves me and just like let me be who I am? But what it did was build the strength for him to be who he is no matter what. So the very contrast of the villain in his story was actually teaching him the deepest soul lesson he could ever learn. That's how we know there's never been a villain, because our greatest villains wind up teaching us our deepest soul lessons. So that's why in the beginning of this, I talked about how there are no villains, there are no victims, because we're all here teaching one another, walking one another home. So I hope I answered your question, but yes, we get these subconscious limitations. We activate them very much so in our formative years, because our mind, our subconscious is in like a spongy state where we're just absorbing everything. We're learning how love works, how money works, how sex works, how relationships work. We're learning what's possible for us. We're learning all of these things. But essentially, whatever our challenge is going to be activated. And it's going to be activated whether we're adults or whether we're kids. It's going to be activated. And then we have the opportunity of a lifetime to free ourselves from that perceived limitation.
So every time we see a challenge in front of us, we should go like, bring it on.
Let's go, baby.
Exactly what I need.
It just got so dark.
Bring it
exactly.
on.
They're the greatest opportunities, because the only reason it's a perceived challenge is because our subconscious is programmed to see a limitation. Are you guys following? The only reason we would see a challenge is because our subconscious has some kind of a lens that's limiting us to seeing it as a challenge. So that's how we know. It's like, oh, I'm perceiving this like a challenge. I'm perceiving this as something that's painful. I'm perceiving this as a problem. So therefore, I have some kind of a lens that's limiting.
So after, let's say, for the example of you doing like so much work on yourself and like the healing, do you not see anything as challenges anymore?
Oh,
like how?
No, I'm human.
I'm human. I want to know.
Yeah, I know. It's like we so want to hear that someone's going to be like, yes, I am completely free and I don't go through challenge. Like we so want to hear that, you know, we so want to hear that. I would say that the levels of freedom that I feel now in my life are levels that I didn't even know were possible. And the amount my life is changing and growing and evolving and like new cool things coming is just like so amazing. But like if I were to say like, do I not see things as challenging? No, but I get how the game works, so it's different. It's like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with a limitation right now. This is something I wasn't aware of, and life is revealing to me right now where I'm not free. Whether it's through a partner, like whether it's through a new relationship, whether it's through a new business move that I'm making that I'm like, oh, I'm scared to do this, but like I'm gonna do it, like, right? So like, oh, this feels challenging in my business, or this feels challenging in my relationship, but like I'm gonna lean in. Because I know that freedom comes on the other side, because the only reason I feel challenged is because I'm revealing a limitation that's here. And I truly believe that like that work is limitless, because the levels of love are infinite that we can experience here. So if the levels of love are infinite, if the levels of freedom are infinite, that means the limitations that could be blocking that are infinite.
Okay.
So it's like a both. we don't want to look for things nonstop, because if we look for it, we'll find it. So we don't want to look for what's wrong. We don't want to get obsessed with looking for the challenges, because then we'll just create them. So it's like the paradox of being big enough beings to hold both. But no, I'm not some being who's sitting here walking on water saying, no, I don't see challenges anymore. Like, no, I'm human, and I get scared and I get nervous and I feel insecure and I do the things too. But I just get the game, so I play it. It's like a game of life. It's like, ooh, a new level.
And then it's like also seeing that part of yourself, like that limitation, maybe that hurt girl, like being a little girl and just holding her.
Exactly.
I see you, like I'm here with you, like I'm reassuring you, like I'm here for you now.
Yeah.
Like I really, you come into relationship with that part of yourself.
Yeah, that's the word.
And first of all, you're just so eloquently spoken. Like I have to say, like you took us on a journey right now. Just the way in which you express your thoughts and sort of like lead us down like your journey and like how the subconscious mind works, I don't think could have been better said or better like expressed in any way. Like I feel like I just got a deeper level. You know, I've been doing some work with coaching and I feel like I'm just like taking mental notes, like and it's beautiful that you're able to identify the core issue just like that, and like that's, you know, you're pinpointing like what is the core belief, like what really needs to be like dissolved in order to live this life of freedom, of empowerment. And it's just so inspiring to just hear you speak. I feel like we're all here in the chat, we're in awe of you.
My goodness, thank you. I'm just fired up about this stuff, because like one of the biggest things behind this work is just knowing the inherent divinity in every single human being. And just like, it breaks my heart to see people who are not accessing that because of the lies in their psyche. And it's like, everyone deserves to feel this freedom. Everyone deserves to feel the greatness and the magic and the miracle of what it is to be them. And so like, when that's the mindset, like when I know every being is divine and every being is inherently free, it becomes so easy to see the limitations. Because it's like, anything that negates the limitless nature of who they are is the limitation, so we can pinpoint it and we can go. But you just talked about, you know, being a coach, and like that's the mindset that's always there for me, that allows me to, I believe, pinpoint the limitation fairly quickly.
Right. And like for some people, you know, letting go of that identity is scary. You know, someone who's lived in victim mode or just identified with being the victim can be scary to like let that go and like really be free without that sort of like safety. Because you said it served them well in some sort of way in their life. It protected them. It made them, you know, feel safe. It made them navigate the world in a certain way. So it can be really scary to be like, okay, I see this and I'm letting this go, and I'm gonna live in not a victim mind state. So
can I drop a golden nugget about that?
Please.
Yes.
All time. Okay. So when the identity, we could say, is associated with the ego, right? It's our ego, it's our persona, it's the identity of ourselves. I like using the word ego for that because it's the ego construct, essentially. The thing about this part of our subconscious and the thing about this part of our ego is that it always has a positive intent. There's a positive intent even for that part of us that is doing like the thing that we don't want to do. Like, let's say someone's smoking cigarettes and doesn't want to anymore and is afraid to like drop the identity of smoking cigarettes, like whatever the thing is, right? So they're resisting it because they're like, who would I be without smoking cigarettes? I know this is a really like light example, but that's how it works. It's like, who would I be without this? This has been my identity my whole life. Who would I be? The thing is, and the ego will hold on even more right before the breakthrough. It will hold on and it will resist and it will fight and it will grab tighter because of what you just said. Like, you said something so beautifully and compassionate and true that people, we get afraid. We get afraid because it's all we've known. But the golden nugget I want to add is the part about this part of us, even though it's afraid, it's working for us. It has a positive intent. We don't want to villainize it. It has a positive intent. There's a reason. It thinks it's helping us. It thinks it's protecting us. It thinks it's helping us. When we understand that, we can take a different approach. because now we can work with this part of us and we can say, well, what is your positive intent? Why are you smoking cigarette? What do you think you're getting out of this? Now it's going to reveal, the subconscious tendency is going to reveal the why behind why it's doing what it's doing. So now once it reveals the why, it's going to be like, oh, I think I'm protecting you, right? That'll be the example. I'm protecting you. Or I've helped so many people quit addictions and smoke cigarettes, and it'll be like, this is how you have your you time. This is how you relax. This is like whatever. This is what people do. It thinks it's protecting us. But once the ego or the subconscious, whatever we call it, once it sees that its way of being is ineffective, the ego collapses on itself and it's willing to change. So this part of us has a positive intent. And once it sees, we work with it and we let it know, I know you have a positive intent, but can you see all the negative consequences of smoking cigarettes? Can you see how it's negatively impacted my life? Can you see how it's actually, this is what happens 99.9% of the time. I hope people are taking notes because this is the shit. So what happens is that the very thing the ego is trying to get, it's often causing the opposite. So if that way of being is trying to protect us, is often causing us to actually not feel safe. If it's trying to, give us a break, it's actually like a cigarette, like, I'm giving you a break, I'm giving you more time to you. It's actually causing you to actually have less time because you have to go get cigarettes, you have to go stop having time with your family. So like, are you guys following? So it's often causing the opposite. But this part of us, the ego, the subconscious, it wants to work with us. So as soon as it sees that, it's like, oh shit, I'm actually causing the opposite of what I want. So now we can talk to it the same way we talk to being a little kid. And it's like, well, are you willing to try something else then? Are you willing to try something that actually would protect us, that actually would give us freedom, that actually would, whatever the positive intent is? And what you'll see is that part is so much more willing to change. Yes, Carrie's on here. She said, my mastermind does break down. I teach all the ways I do things inside of my mastermind. So I teach this stuff step by step, and I teach people how to do this for themselves. But that is exactly the step. What I'm going to summarize it with is when the ego realizes that what it's doing is ineffective toward what it wants, it dissolves on itself and is so much more willing to change. So this is how I help people break addictions they've had their whole lives. This is how I help people do these things and this is how we can work through those moments, even with ourselves, when we're like, oh my goodness, I feel scared to change. And it's like, okay, well, let me feel into the true negative consequences of what it's like to be this. What it's like to currently be in the pain and the suffering of who I'm now being. Once we see that, we are so much more willing to be like, okay, it might be scary to go to the other side, but this way of being is just not worth it anymore. Are you following? Yeah. So it's like that energy of being real with ourselves and letting our ego know how ineffective it actually is to the end result that it's trying to get and trying to help us with.
Mic drop.
Seriously.
Yeah, our hats off to you.
No, you said
awesome.
it and you brought it, and it's so accurate and beautifully said. So amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Thank you for
I'm sure that
letting me go.
people really loved it and people enjoyed it and people learned a lot from it. So that was amazing. That was really amazing.
Absolutely. And for me personally, we talked about sort of doing like a coaching session on live, and like just after hearing you speak and seeing how your brain works, like, yes, it's a little scary, like putting yourself out there, people watching, but I don't think I would rather do it with anybody else than with you.
That means so much to me. I would love to do that if it feels appropriate, so you can feel into it. Maybe we'll come back on and do some live coaching, teaching, and a session around it. And
absolutely,
like, it's so beautiful. I do we're almost at the hour mark, so it'll be quick, but I do live coaching on my masterminds because there is such a deep level of healing that happens when we witness someone heal.
Yes.
Like when we witness someone else heal, it heals a part of us. So I want you to know that if you choose to do this, and I know you said you'd be willing, that you'll be helping more people than you know, because your healing is all of our healing. And when we witness that happen, it's really a gift, because we get to heal by virtue of witnessing it happen. So it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as well as, like, you know, being a coach or learning how to be a coach, you have to do the work yourself, and you have to like really get into like the nitty gritty. So I think it'd be just a beautiful experience for me as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we'll have so much fun. It'll be beautiful. Yes.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us and just bearing your heart and your wisdom and your mind with us. It's been such a pleasure. I feel personally just like rejuvenated of like energy and just knowledge, and I'm very inspired, to say the least. So thank you so much for just being here with us and holding that space.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank you. I adore you both. Thank you so much for having me and letting me go. Ask me one question and I'll go for like an hour. So thank you guys for that. I just adore you both, and I'm so honored to be a part of this GFL family and a part of your mission. Like, I couldn't be happier to wear these clothes proudly. So just thank you for the mission and what you guys are doing, because it impacts the subconscious of humanity as well, exactly what you're doing. So I just adore you guys and look forward to continue playing and weaving in these spaces. So thank you for having me.
Thank
We'll
you,
be
Sarah.
playing
We love
soon.
Love you
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone watching.